Hello, everyone, and welcome to AfterCLIMB. I'm Karen Deckard, the Director of Sales and Marketing here at RMS, and today we're going to be talking about your RMS credit card processing options. I know this isn't anyone's favorite topic, but the right processing solution can have a huge impact on your costs and your cash flow, customer perception, even what programs you offer in your pharmacy like home delivery, meds to beds. My goal today is that you'll come away from this presentation feeling a little more comfortable with some of our processing terminology, and if you're considering a change anytime soon, you'll have a better idea of what to look for and what to look out for. So we've got a lot to cover, and I don't want to put anyone to sleep, so let's go ahead and just dive in. To really understand where we're at with credit card processing options today, we have to go back in time a little bit and look at all of the things that have occurred over the last 15 years that have made pharmacies such a unique space to process in. Dating back to the early 2000s, credit card processing was simple and straightforward. Processing in a pharmacy was no different than processing in, say, a convenience store. It was fairly common for us to encounter pharmacies that didn't have point-of-sale systems. And when it came to processing with RMS, just like today, there were a range of processing choices available. Integrations were simple and straightforward, and usually the biggest variation in functionality between processing options was usually whether the integration supported PIN-based debit or debit as credit. From the outset, we tried very hard not to place restrictions on who our customers could partner with for credit card processing. A customer could hunt for the best rate, find the partnership that made them feel the best, and usually be good to go. So needless to say that if this was the world we were operating in today, I wouldn't be giving this presentation. So what changed? In 2007, the IRS created IIAS, or Inventory Information Approval System Standards. These standards were meant to more tightly control what your customers could purchase with an FSA or HSA card. In other words, they realized that some people were going into pharmacies and spending their health benefit funds on beauty items or gift department items. The honor system wasn't working, so they created IIAS standards. In order to comply with these standards, the Special Interest Group for IIAS Standards, or CJIS, was born. They created certification procedures that would allow merchants to accept FSA cards under the new regulations. This process, which still exists today, requires a point-of-sale system and a credit card processor that are certified with CJIS. Now, as I mentioned at this point, it's not unheard of for pharmacies to not have point-of-sale systems. So in addition to full IIAS certification processes, the 90% exemption rule was created for pharmacies whose sales are made up of at least 90% eligible products. Based on the original eligible products list, this was a good chunk of independent pharmacies. With a little help from their credit card processor and a short form on CJIS, pharmacies could bypass the requirement for point of sale. Unfortunately, it didn't work very well. Many card brands wouldn't accept transactions from exempt merchants, and we still encounter this issue today. So what IIS standards really started was a narrowing of the options pharmacies had to choose from when it came to credit card processing. Not only did they have to have a POS system, they needed one that was certified with CJIS. Then they had to select a credit card processor that was certified with CJIS and certified with their point of sale provider. Now today we have CJIS certifications with a wide range of processing companies, but not every processing solution supports IIAS standards, especially as we get into some of the newer processing service gateways. IIAS also limits what comes to market and when for pharmacies, which we'll talk about a bit later on. Importantly, CJIS and IIAS are still a factor, despite significantly smaller eligible products list than we had in 2007. Outside of the certification, processing representatives need to understand IIAS standards and be able to navigate CJIS. Next, I want to talk about PCI compliance. It's a term you probably hear fairly regularly. Maybe it means something to you, maybe it doesn't. But we can't have a thorough conversation on credit card processing without at least briefly touching on what this means and how it plays into our options and solutions. PCI stands for Payment Card Industry Compliance. PCI is a set of regulations, standards, and requirements put in place for the secure processing of credit and debit cards. It is the card brands, so Visa, MasterCard, Amex, their response to the data breaches that plagued merchants, resulting in stolen card data and fraudulent transactions. Every merchant is responsible for their own PCI compliance. And what this looks like for you really depends on a number of different factors. What payment applications you use, your point of sale system, what your processing solution is, all of that. For merchants with a lengthier PCI self-assessment process, we really rely heavily on the credit card processing company to advise merchants. So again, some expertise is really important here when you're selecting a processing relationship. If you're not compliant, you're probably paying a non-compliance fee from your processor. And if you were to experience a breach, you could be severely fined or lose your ability to process credit card transactions altogether. The other piece to PCI is that hardware is certified under PCI regulations as well. And those certifications have set expiration dates. So this is just another limiting factor on what processing solutions we can use and the hardware we can sell, because everything has to be PCI certified. Now, let's fast forward a few years. We've come to terms with IIAS standards. We're getting more comfortable with PCI regulations. It's more difficult than it used to be, but manageable. Then along comes EMV. Europay, MasterCard, Visa, chip and PIN, whatever you want to call it. EMV isn't new technology, even when the payment industry announces their intent to migrate processing in the United States to it around the 2015 mark. At this point, it's been in Europe for since the early 90s, I believe. The purpose of EMV is to prevent credit card fraud. That little security chip that we all have in our cards now prevents somebody from creating a duplicate of your credit card and then using it, assuming they use it as a brick and mortar merchant that uses EMV technology. EMV was highly misunderstood when it came out, and still today there are some misconceptions. So let's clear those up really quickly. EMV does not prevent against the data breaches. It wouldn't have prevented the major card data breaches that we all grew used to hearing about in the early 2000s. EMV is not a requirement. You don't have to have it. You don't have to be able to accept chip and PIN cards as a chip and PIN. You won't get fined for not having EMV technology. However, if you process a chip-enabled card as a swipe transaction and that transaction is disputed by the card holder, you accept liability for that transaction, otherwise known as a chargeback. While it's not required, EMV is now standard for all of our integrations, meaning we can't set you up on a new credit card processing account without it. Also, interestingly enough, EMV is kind of where IIAS standards came back around and caused some problems. Processors had to certify hardware solutions to be EMV compliant and essentially code brand new solutions. And this, it costs money for everybody. And because pharmacy solutions were a small piece of that puzzle for them, and they required the addition of IIAS processing capabilities, most companies tackled those last. EMV compliant solutions that pharmacies could use came to the market much later than pretty much any other retail vertical. Some processing solutions never do it at all. So now you might be seeing a trend. We've started with a retail vertical that wasn't all that different to do business in than any other, but we've slowly narrowed down to a pharmacy credit card processing solution it has to be very specialized. It's a very specialized segment of the market. So now that we've set the stage a little bit, I want to talk about encryptions. First, we're going to talk about the thing that actually does what most people think EMV does, which is end-to-end encryption, or E2EE. E2EE virtually eliminates chances of a data breach, card data breach at least, by encrypting the card information at the time of entry. Customer card data never touches the point of sale system, making this a much more secure processing solution. However, E2EE does not protect against physical card skimmers. It is standard on all of our current integrations here at RMS. You can't implement a credit card processing solution, a new one at RMS, without this basic level of security. The next encryption item is validated P2PE, validated point-to-point encryption. Validated P2PE is the same basic technology as E2EE. It works the same way. However, validated solutions have gone through a rigorous process to be vetted and certified by the PCI Security Standards Council. They're the folks that kind of govern PCI requirements where all the certifications go through. There are more controls in place, so like chain of custody for devices from the point they're shipped out to the point they're implemented at the pharmacy. Validated P2PE is available as an add-on for many processing integrations, but it's a smaller subset of customers right now that want this option, so not everyone offers it. We have a number of different pathways to get there. A benefit of validated P2PE is that it does limit your scope for PCI compliance processes. If you're on a standard processing solution, even in end-to-end encrypted processing solution, which are all of ours are standard that way, you could have a pretty lengthy self-assessment process. But this convenience does have a cost. Every validated P2P provider we encounter charges merchants some monthly fees in addition to standard processing rates. So it does come with an additional recurring cost there. Last important note is that both validated P2PE and E2EE still require merchants to visually inspect card acceptance devices and follow other basic PCI compliance requirements. Last note on encryptions is just a quick touch on how hardware encryptions work and what those are. So your credit card processing device, your signature pad, is injected with encryption protocols. These have a range of purposes for everything from your end-to-end and point-to-point encryptions to debit encryptions for PIN-based debit. Why does this matter? Well, a lot of it's behind the scenes stuff, but it does impact both your implementation and any time you want to change processors. Encryptions are usually different across processing platforms or even within the same organization. First Data, for example, is a huge company. So an account that's boarded through a First Data independent sales representative is going to have a different set of encryptions than one that's boarded through Bank of America, let's say. Devices generally can't be injected remotely. So a device is physically sent into an encryption facility before it can be installed. So that would be before your implementation, if you're a brand new customer, or if you're changing processors, either your new hardware would have to be injected or existing hardware would have to be sent in to be re-encrypted. So it does add just a little bit of a layer of complication and some changes there. A few other things to know before we move on. I want to talk about a couple more key concepts. First one is tokenization. Tokenization is how you securely keep cards on file and process card not present transactions. If any of you have a Rolodex of credit card numbers or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever else, that's a big PCI compliance no-no and could result in fines or, again, even the loss of your ability to accept credit cards at your pharmacy if you were to experience a breach. The solution is to create tokens. So a token, basically, you enter the card information on your processing device, and it will provide you with a token that gets attached to the customer record. It's just basically a unique set of characters that references that card at the processor level. So then you have a token method of payment that's on your till. And when you want to charge a card that's for like a mail order transaction or delivery, the customer's not present for whatever reason, it could be for curbside pickup. You just select your token method of payment, select that customer and that card, and that processes the transaction. So essentially, there is now no credit card information on your store network or physically on your premises, which is much more secure and compliant. I know was a mouthful and a little bit convoluted. So if you do, if that's something you need for mail order or something like that, just let us know and we'll walk you through how it works. The last piece is NFC. NFC stands for Near Field Communication. This is contactless payments like Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, Google Wallet, all of that good stuff. This, again, is nothing that's required for you to implement. It's good to have as convenience-based, feature based on your customer demographic. Maybe you get requests for it, maybe you don't. Just something to keep an eye on. And maybe if you're, making a change, look for that feature. Both of these options are available on a broad range of our integrations. So they're fairly standard. So what we've kind of gotten to here is that processing for pharmacies can get complicated really quickly. And there's a lot of places where a processing partnership can fall short. First, we're dealing with latency. Processing technology can take longer to get to the pharmacy industry. And all of these regulations mean that there are fewer direct integrations, i.e. RMS is your POS solution. We don't connect to First Data directly. We connect to platforms that specialize in processing integrations and make the connection that way. This additional layer, it simplifies things and opens more options overall, but that added layer does mean more people having to get involved for anything new, and it just takes a bit longer. Then there's the problem that there are a lot of processing representatives out there, and to put it simply, not everyone can support a pharmacy. I know that they'll tell you they can. I know they'll tell you they probably worked with RMS before. They probably haven't. But you probably get solicited by processing reps on a regular basis. Here's my cautionary note. If your processing representative doesn't understand the concepts we've talked about today, those are red flags. Often we run into implementation roadblocks, meaning they can't set up the account up, properly. It does have to have very specific parameters to integrate not only with our system, but to be compliant and work with CGIS and all of that good stuff. So if we don't receive the right encryption keys or important account info is missing, it creates some unnecessary frustration. Our team, we pretty much always, we almost always get past it because our team that handles these transitions is very persistent. But there's probably another option that avoids all that frustration out there. Bottom line, just give us a call before you sign any agreements so we can review everything with you and make sure it's going to be smooth, because credit card processing is necessary for your business every day. And it's one thing that we don't, we want it to be smooth and easy. Now, as I mentioned, you're likely getting solicited by processing reps on a regular basis. That's because, I don't know, are you really happy with your credit card processing solution? Apathetic for it, it's there, you don't think it's charging you maybe too much money, or it's just working, so we're going to set it aside. But we do talk with customers looking to change processing accounts daily. We hear things like statements are confusing, hidden fees, that weren't there when we were initially quoted, lack of support post go live, rates that skyrocket, like my cable bill every 12 months when my new customer discount goes away. So how do we make it easy? Everything I've told you so far adds up to credit card processing not being easy. Our goal, of course, is to make it that way. So when we approach processing solutions, we want to eliminate some of the variables that we talked about today. Control areas where we see the most customer dissatisfaction, save you money whenever we can, but still maintain flexibility, because at the end of the day, it's your choice and your business. So here's how we accomplish that goal with our processing solutions. We have multiple integrations with processing platforms. This allows us to connect with most major processing entities. Most of these platforms have some licensing costs up front, and then everything else is covered as part of your RMS support outside of your processing fees after that. IIAS certification assistance is part of every implementation because FSA card acceptance is a must for pharmacies. So we're going to make sure that's taken care of. EDEE, the end-to-end encryption protocol, it's standard with all of our new integrations, as well as EMV and NFC. So in most cases, tokenization is going to be available, but not all processing integrations support it. So we just want to double check that if that's something you're looking for. We do offer validated P2PE, again, multiple pathways to get there if that's something you need. Although, as I mentioned earlier, that option does add some recurring expense. We've covered a lot of ground today, and I just want to talk about one more thing that you might not have heard about yet. So we're almost there. Just bear with me. Even with so much of every setup standardized, we found a lot of our customers were still frustrated, dissatisfied with credit card processing issues. Unfortunately, most of those problems, like rates and customer support, were out of our control. So we decided to cut out as many variables as possible and moving parts as possible, and created RMS Pay. So with RMS Pay, instead of working with a bank or an independent sales rep for processing, you work directly with your RMS customer success manager. They know exactly the setup, exactly the integration we need to use. There's no back and forth. There's no question if it's going to work, it's going to work. And it makes that setup process so much smoother. Outside of that, though, one thing that we really like is being able to offer flat rate, transparent pricing as based off of your volume and your average ticket size, because those are really the factors that impact processing rates for you, or should impact processing rates for you. And of course, maybe the best part, support for RMS Pay is just like your standard RMS support. It's 24/7. Our reps are there. Just give us a call. And of course, we have the standard processing packages that check all those functionality and capability boxes that we talked about earlier. So FSA card acceptance, of course, that's a must. End-to-end standard, you can go validated P2PE if you need to. Tokenization, NFC, EMV, all those are there for you. So if you're interested in the RMS Pay program, it's really easy to get started. Just send us a copy of your most recent processing statement. We'll decode it to figure out how much you're paying each month in fees and see if we can save you some money along the way. If you are on older processing hardware and looking to get upgraded, like say you haven't transitioned to EMV yet or something like that, we can definitely assist with that during the process. RMS Pay actually is a great way to go in that case because hopefully we can offset some of those upgrade costs by saving you money on processing and offering some, 0% interest payment plans to spread out the cost and the impact for you. And you know what, if you're getting a great deal and we can't save you any money, we're going to be upfront with you on that. The whole point is to streamline processing, make it easy, make it less stressful, and hopefully put some money back in your wallet. Most of the time we can do that. Sometimes we can't. We just appreciate the opportunity to try. So if you're interested, just let us know. And that is all I have for you today. So thanks so much for hanging in there with me. I know this was a lot of information. We did cover a lot. So if you have questions about credit card processing options, need to get more in depth on anything that we discussed, please feel free to reach out to me or to anyone here at RMS. I can chat with you directly, or we can put you in touch with your customer success manager to take a look at your processing solutions. And anyway, we can make things a bit easier for you. So thanks again for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next time.